The salvage freighter Copper Sun drifted through the asteroid graveyard like a ghost hunting for treasure among the bones of the dead. Its aging sensors pinged steadily, bouncing signals off centuries-old wreckage that floated in the eternal darkness. Broken warships, shattered colony vessels, and the twisted remains of mining stations created a maze of metal and memories. This was the fringe, the forgotten edge of known space where fortunes were lost and desperate crews came looking for one last score. Captain Vriki stood on the bridge, his massive reptilian frame hunched over the scanner display. His scales gleamed like polished obsidian under the dim lighting, catching and reflecting the glow of instrument panels. His golden eyes narrowed as he studied the readouts with the kind of focus that came from months of disappointment. The crew had been scraping by on salvage runs for what felt like forever, pulling apart dead satellites and stripping copper wire from abandoned stations. They barely made enough to cover fuel costs, let alone turn a profit. But this signature was different. This was something big. "Captain," his navigator called out, her voice tight with tension. She was a Thurian, covered in purple scales that rippled when she was nervous. Right now those scales were rippling like water. Her tail twitched back and forth, smacking against her chair. "That energy signature, I'm reading it as precursor origin. That's impossible, right? Those things have been dead for over a century." Vrikis felt his heart rate pick up despite himself. A precursor vessel. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories. The eldest had vanished during something called the Great Silence, leaving behind ships and technology that made modern engineering look like children playing with blocks. Governments had spent fortunes trying to crack open precursor systems. Universities had dedicated entire departments to studying their designs. All of them had failed. "Could be a false reading," Vrikis muttered, but his claws were already plotting an intercept course. False reading or not, they had to check it out. That's when Tyler Hayes floated up from the engineering bay, pulling himself hand over hand along the corridor railings in the low gravity. He was wiping black grease off his hands with a rag that was probably dirtier than his hands had been. Tyler was human, which made him an oddity out here in the fringe. Most humans stuck to the inner colonies where everything was safe, predictable, and boring. The ones who ventured out to the edge were either running from something or looking for something. Tyler had never said which category he fell into, and Vrikis had never asked. The other crew members considered humans to be either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Usually stupid. Humans had a reputation for ignoring warning labels, taking apart things that shouldn't be taken apart, and surviving situations that should have killed them through sheer dumb luck and stubbornness. Did someone say precursor vessel? Tyler's face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. His brown eyes went wide with excitement. "Wait, are you talking about the Eternal Meridian? I've read about her. That ship went dark during the Great Silence, right? That was 117 years ago. Nobody's seen her since." Vrikis turned to look at the human, one eye ridge raising in surprise. "You know about this ship? Know about it? Man, I've read every report I could find." Tyler grabbed onto a handhold and pulled himself closer to the scanner display. The Eternal Meridian was one of the eldest Guardian vessels. She was massive, armed to the teeth, and running some kind of AI system that made modern computers look like calculators. Then one day, boom, all the precursor ships just went silent. Every single one across the galaxy. Dead in the water. The navigator hissed softly. Every species has tried to reactivate precursor technology. The Drakim Empire sent their best engineers. The Federation threw quantum computers at the problem. Nobody's ever gotten so much as a blinking light. The security encryption alone would take 10,000 years to crack, even with our fastest systems. Vrikis waved a clawed hand dismissively, already thinking about profit margins. "We stripped the hull plating and power cores. Precursor metals are worth a fortune even as scrap. The power cores alone could fund our retirement." He started running calculations in his head. If they could extract even half the valuable materials, they'd be set for life. But Tyler was shaking his head, that reckless grin spreading across his face. It was the kind of expression that made the rest of the crew nervous because it usually meant the human was about to do something crazy. "Come on, Captain. Let me take a crack at her first. Give me 2 days. Just 48 hours to see if I can wake her up. If I can't get her running, then you can cut her up all you want. But what if I can do it? What if I can get a precursor ship operational?" Vrikis stared at the human for a long moment. Tyler Hayes was a good mechanic, he'd give him that. The human had kept the Copper Sun running with duct tape and spare parts when by all rights the ship should have fallen apart months ago. But this was different. This was precursor technology. The best minds in the galaxy had failed. Still, what did they have to lose? 2 days wouldn't matter in the long run. "48 hours, Hayes," Vriki said finally, his voice like gravel grinding together. "You get 2 days to work your human magic. If nothing happens, we harvest what we came for." "Understood." Tyler's grin got even wider. "Understood, Captain. You won't regret this." Vrikis watched the human float away toward the airlock, already muttering to himself about power systems and bypass protocols. The captain had a sinking feeling he was going to regret this very much. Tyler crossed through the airlock into the Eternal Meridian, and the first thing that hit him was the silence. Not just quiet, but the kind of deep, heavy silence that pressed against his eardrums like physical weight. His helmet light cut through absolute darkness, the beam seeming small and insignificant against the vast emptiness ahead. He took his first steps into the corridor, and his boots made soft magnetic clicks against the deck plating. The sound echoed away into nothing. The ship was massive. No, massive didn't even cover it. The copper sun could have fit inside this thing 10 times over with room to spare. The corridors stretched ahead like cathedral halls, disappearing beyond the reach of his light. Every surface was smooth and metallic, covered in geometric patterns that hurt his eyes to look at. They seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them, like optical illusions carved into the walls. Beautiful. Dead. Silent as a tomb. Tyler moved deeper into the ship, his light playing across surfaces that had seen no illumination for 117 years. The architecture was strange, built according to rules and aesthetics that human minds weren't quite wired to understand. But underneath all the alien weirdness, Tyler could recognize the bones of it. This was a ship. Ships had certain things in common no matter who built them. They needed power, life support, propulsion, and control systems. The trick was finding them. He'd spent the last year reading every report he could get his hands on about failed attempts to reactivate precursor technology. The Drachim Empire had sent their best quantum engineers, guys with brains the size of watermelons and more degrees than a thermometer. They tried to crack the encryption with advanced algorithms. Failed. The Federation had thrown artificial intelligence at the problem, letting quantum computers run millions of simulations. Failed. The Krell Collective had even tried building a replica precursor interface from scratch. Also failed. Everyone approached it the same way. They treated it like a puzzle to be solved with math and processing power. They threw technology at technology, assuming that the key to understanding an advanced alien ship was to be even more advanced. They all failed for the same reason. Tyler pulled out his toolkit and made his way to what his gut told him was the command center. It was a large circular room with a raised platform in the middle, surrounded by console stations that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. He sat down cross-legged on the deck and just looked around. Not scanning, not analyzing, not running diagnostics. Just looking with his own 2 eyes. He reached out and ran his hands over the control surfaces, feeling the texture under his gloved fingers. The material was cool to the touch, somewhere between metal and glass. But there, on certain crystalline interfaces, he could feel something different. Slight discoloration. Microscopic wear patterns. The alien equivalent of favorite buttons, worn down by repeated use over who knows how many years. "You guys weren't gods," Tyler muttered to the empty ship, his voice sounding small in the vast space. "You were just people. Engineers. And engineers, they always do the same thing. They build shortcuts. Secret buttons. Emergency overrides. The stuff you don't put in the manual." It was something his grandfather had taught him back in Montana, working on old trucks in a dusty garage. The fancy computers would tell you what was wrong, sure, but sometimes you just needed to know where the previous owner had jimmied the carburetor or which wire they'd spliced to make things work. You needed to think like the person who built it, not like a machine trying to decode it. Tyler started searching for physical mechanisms instead of digital ones. He pried open panels with his multi-tool, crawled under console stations and squeezed into maintenance crawlways that other species probably couldn't fit through. The Drachim were too big, the Krell too bulky, the Therians too inflexible. But humans were just the right size to fit into tight spaces, and Tyler had spent half his life squeezing into engine compartments and behind access panels. Hours turned into a day. Back on the Copper Sun, the crew monitored nervously through his helmet camera feed. They watched their crazy human crawl through a dead alien warship like he was fixing a car, muttering to himself and occasionally cursing when he banged his elbow. The navigator kept suggesting they pull him out. Captain Vrikis kept giving him more time. Tyler's back ached. His knees hurt. His hands were cramping inside his gloves. But he kept searching, working his way through the ship deck by deck, section by section. He was looking for something specific now. Every ship had emergency systems. Every complex piece of machinery had a backup plan for when the fancy stuff stopped working. It was just a matter of finding it. Then 36 hours and Tyler found it. Hidden behind decorative paneling in a maintenance corridor, tucked away where nobody would look unless they were specifically searching for it. A mechanical bypass. A manual override lever. It was so simple, so beautifully low-tech, that every other species had overlooked it completely. They'd been looking for quantum encryption keys and digital access codes when the answer was literally a big red button. Well, not red. More of a crystalline purple. But it was a lever, plain and simple. Probably meant for emergency use by maintenance crews when all the fancy automated systems went down. Tyler stared at it for a long moment, his heart pounding. This was it. This was what everyone had missed. They'd been trying to hack their way in through the front door when there was a maintenance entrance around back the whole time. Beautiful, Tyler whispered and wrapped his hand around the lever. It felt solid under his grip, real and physical in a way that alien technology rarely did. He took a breath, said a quick prayer to whatever engineering gods might be listening, and pulled the lever down. Nothing happened. The ship remained dark and silent. Tyler's shoulders slumped with disappointment. But then he remembered something else his grandfather used to say. Sometimes you can't just turn the key. Sometimes you have to prime the engine first. Nothing happened. The lever clicked into place, but the ship remained dark and dead around him. Tyler stood there for a moment, staring at the lever, feeling disappointment settle in his chest like a heavy stone. Then he laughed at himself, the sound echoing in his helmet. Right. Can't start without a jump. Stupid. He shook his head, grinning at his own mistake. It was just like his dad's old truck back in Montana, the beat-up Ford that sat in their driveway for 3 years. That thing never started on the first try. You had to prime the system first, get some juice flowing through the lines before the engine would even think about turning over. His dad used to say that some machines needed a little encouragement, a reminder of what it felt like to be alive. Tyler pulled out his portable scanner and started tracing the power conduits that ran through the walls like veins. The scanner beeped and clicked, showing him energy pathways that hadn't carried a single watt in over a century. He followed the lines deeper into the ship until he found what he was looking for. Auxiliary capacitors, big crystalline structures that looked like giant batteries. They should have held enough charge to bootstrap the main reactor, but the scanner showed them completely drained. Flat as a pancake. After 117 years of sitting dead in space, every drop of stored energy had leaked away into nothing. Okay, we can fix this, Tyler muttered to himself. He keyed his radio. Captain, I need the portable power cells from the engineering bay. All of them. There was a long pause. Hayes, those cells power our life support backups. If something goes wrong. Then we're already dead anyway, Tyler said. Trust me on this one. Another pause, then Vreekes growled his approval. 20 minutes later, Tyler was dragging 4 heavy power cells through the corridors of the Eternal Meridian, his muscles burning from the effort even in low gravity. He lined them up next to the auxiliary capacitors and stared at the problem. The connections didn't match. Of course they didn't match. Human technology and precursor technology were about as compatible as a square peg in a round hole. So Tyler did what humans do best. He improvised. He pulled out his welding torch and started fabricating adapters on the spot, cutting pieces from damaged panels and reshaping them to bridge the gap between human power cells and alien capacitors. His welds were ugly, rough beads of metal that would have made his instructors back at tech school weep. His connections were crude, held together with magnetic clamps and prayer. But the voltages matched. The polarity was right. They'd work. Probably. Maybe. Tyler wiped sweat from his forehead and stepped back to admire his handiwork. It looked like something a kid would build in their garage, all mismatched parts and exposed wiring. But his grandfather used to say that pretty doesn't matter if it doesn't run, and ugly doesn't matter if it does. He engaged the bypass lever again and started feeding power from the cells into the ancient capacitors. The flow was slow at first, a trickle of energy creeping into systems that had been dry for longer than Tyler had been alive. The capacitors began to glow faintly, filling with charge like empty lungs filling with air. Then the Eternal Meridian groaned. It was a deep, resonant sound that Tyler felt in his bones, the sound of a giant waking from a very long sleep. His heart hammered in his chest. Lights flickered to life along the corridor walls, starting as dim flickers and growing brighter. Purple light, blue light, and colors Tyler didn't have names for, colors that probably didn't exist in normal space. The geometric patterns on the walls began to pulse with bioluminescence, creating waves of light that washed down the corridors. Gravity plating hummed beneath his boots, activating section by section. Tyler felt his weight return properly, no longer the strange floating sensation of low gravity but solid, normal weight. The corridor suddenly filled with sound. The whisper of environmental systems cycling air, the distant hum of power flowing through conduits, the soft clicking of automated systems coming back online after 117 years of silence. Tyler. Captain Vrikis's voice exploded through his radio, making him jump. What did you do? The entire ship just lit up like a star. Our sensors are going crazy. Power readings are off our scale. We're detecting energy signatures we don't even have classifications for. Tyler opened his mouth to answer, but before he could say anything, a new voice echoed through the ship. It came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the walls themselves. The voice was melodic and ancient, speaking in a language that sounded like music and mathematics had a baby. The words flowed together in harmonics that made Tyler's brain hurt trying to process them. It was beautiful and alien and completely incomprehensible. Then the voice paused. There was a moment of silence, and Tyler could almost feel something vast and intelligent turning its attention toward him, studying him like a scientist examining a strange new specimen. When the voice spoke again, the words were English. Perfect English with no accent, as if the language had existed forever. Emergency protocols engaged. Maintenance technician identified. The voice sounded almost surprised, if an AI could sound surprised. You are not eldest. Your species is unknown to my database. Your genetic structure is unfamiliar. Your technology is primitive. Yet you activated manual override protocols restricted to engineering caste only. This should be impossible. Explain this impossibility. Tyler pulled off his helmet, letting it hang from his suit clip. The air was breathable now, cool and clean with a faint metallic taste. He looked up at the ceiling, grinning like an idiot because he'd actually done it. He'd woken up a precursor ship. A human mechanic from Montana who barely graduated tech school. Name's Tyler Hayes, he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Human. From Earth. And I'm just a guy who's good with machines. I don't know about impossible. I just know what works. What do I call you? The voice was quiet for a moment, processing. I am Meridian. This vessel's AI core and guardian. And you, Tyler Hayes of Earth, have accomplished what every species in the galaxy has attempted and failed for over a century. You have awakened me. How? Tyler shrugged, still grinning. Guess I just asked nicely. Meridian's story poured out over the next hour, and Tyler sat on the deck listening like a kid hearing campfire tales. The holographic displays filled the air around him, showing images and symbols that his brain could barely process. The eldest hadn't died like everyone thought. They hadn't been wiped out by some plague or war or cosmic disaster. They'd evolved beyond physical form, ascending to something greater, something that existed outside normal space and time. It was the kind of thing that sounded like religious mumbo-jumbo, except Meridian showed him the data, the recordings, the proof. But before they left, the eldest had done something interesting. They'd left their ships behind as guardians and tests. Not museums or monuments, but active trials for the younger species that would eventually find them. The eternal Meridian and ships like it had been programmed to remain dormant, waiting. Not waiting for someone to crack their encryption or override their security. Waiting for someone who approached them the right way. For 117 years, 43 different species attempted to access my systems, Meridian explained, and holographic records appeared showing each attempt. Tyler saw Drachim engineers with their quantum computers, their faces twisted in frustration as every algorithm failed. He saw Federation AI cores running billions of calculations, trying every possible combination of commands. He saw Krell scientists building elaborate interfaces, attempting to trick the ship into responding. All of them used brute force hacking attempts or advanced analysis, Meridian continued. The hologram showed each failed attempt, species after species throwing their best technology at an impenetrable wall. All failed. The eldest designed me to respond only to those who approach technology with humility and practical wisdom. Not those who seek to conquer it, but those who seek to understand it. Tyler scratched his head, still trying to wrap his mind around it. I just treated you like my granddad's tractor. Nothing fancy. Just figured you were a machine built by people and people think in certain ways. Find the shortcuts, find the emergency overrides, find the stuff that makes sense. Precisely, Meridian's voice held something that might have been satisfaction. You did not try to conquer me. You did not try to force your way in. You tried to understand me. You approached me as an equal, as one engineer respecting the work of another. This is the difference. This is what the eldest sought. This is why you succeeded where all others failed. Tyler felt a warmth spread through his chest. He'd done something impossible, something that the smartest beings in the galaxy couldn't figure out. And he'd done it by treating an ancient alien warship like it was his granddad's old John Deere. But the celebration was short-lived. Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship, loud and urgent, echoing through the corridors. Red light flooded the command center, pulsing in time with the alarms. Meridian's holographic form flickered and changed color, going from calm blue to angry red. Critical alert, Meridian announced, and Tyler's stomach dropped. My awakening has triggered an automated beacon. This beacon was designed to inform the eldest of successful activation. However, the eldest are no longer here to receive it. Others have detected the signal. Holographic displays shifted, showing a tactical map of the surrounding space. Tyler saw red markers appearing at the edge of the display, moving toward them with purpose. Lots of red markers. Vrak's hegemony forces detected, Meridian continued. They have been searching for precursor vessels for decades. I have been monitoring their communications. They are extremely hostile. Fleet inbound. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Back on the Copper Sun, Captain Vrikis was already barking orders. His voice crackled through Tyler's radio, tight with panic. Haste, get back here now. We're leaving. We can't fight a Vrak's war fleet. Those things eat cruisers for breakfast. Tyler's mind raced. The Vrak's were bad news, everyone knew that. They were a militaristic empire that had been expanding through this sector for years, crushing anyone who got in their way. They'd been hunting for precursor technology to add to their arsenal, and now they detected a functional precursor ship. They'd come in force, and they wouldn't leave until they either took the Eternal Meridian or destroyed it. Meridian, you've got weapons, right? Tyler asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. Big ones? Can't we just fight them off? Meridian's voice went quiet, and somehow that silence was worse than the klaxons. My weapon systems are online but not fully integrated. After such prolonged dormancy, my combat subroutines require recalibration. My targeting systems need synchronization. My defensive shields need to cycle through full activation protocols. I require 12 hours to reach combat readiness. The Vrak's will arrive in 6. I cannot fight at current capacity. The probability of survival is less than 2%. Tyler stared at the holographic display, watching those red markers creep closer. 6 hours. They had 6 hours before a war fleet showed up to either capture or destroy them. The Copper Sun couldn't fight them off. Meridian couldn't fight at full strength. They were trapped. He looked around at the maze of systems surrounding him, all those alien conduits and crystalline interfaces pulsing with power. Then he looked down at his toolkit, scratched and dented from years of improvised repairs. A crazy idea formed in his mind, the kind of idea that had gotten him kicked out of 3 different engineering academies. The kind of idea that also had saved his life a dozen times in the field when things went sideways. Tyler cracked his knuckles and picked up his welding torch. Meridian, how do you feel about doing things the messy way? Absolutely not, Meridian protested as Tyler started pulling panels off the walls and cross-wiring systems that were never meant to connect. Sparks flew from his welding torch as he bypassed safety interlocks that had been in place for thousands of years. These safety protocols exist for critical reasons. They prevent catastrophic overloads, system failures, and potential reactor breaches. This is chaos. This is madness. Chaos is what we're good at, Tyler shouted back over the sound of his tools. He was crawling through access tunnels, dragging power cables behind him like a spider spinning a web. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool air. Look, I get it. The eldest built things perfect, elegant, by the book. But we don't have time for perfect. We don't need elegant. We need working, and we need it now. He rerouted auxiliary power through the environmental systems, stealing energy from life support and gravity plating to boost weapons charging time. It meant some sections of the ship would be without air and gravity, but nobody was using those sections anyway. He cannibalized components from non-essential systems, pulling out crystalline regulators and repurposing them as power bridges. When he ran out of precursor parts, he started using human tech. Captain Vrikis nearly had a heart attack when Tyler requested the mining lasers from the Copper Sun. Those lasers were their primary salvage tools, worth more than the ship itself. But Tyler needed them as makeshift capacitor bridges, using their power cells to create a jury-rigged network that could channel energy to the weapons faster than the eldest's perfect systems could manage. Every shortcut violated eldest design principles. Every bypass made Meridian's diagnostic system scream warnings. The ship was running hot, power flowing through pathways that were never designed to carry that load. But the numbers worked. Barely. Tyler's ugly, Improvised repairs created a patchwork weapons system that could fire at maybe 40% capacity. It wasn't much, but it was better than 0%. When the Vrax fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule, they expected an easy target. Their intelligence said precursor ships couldn't activate. Their scans showed a single salvage vessel and a derelict that had been dead for 117 years. They came in fast and confident, weapons hot, ready to board and claim their prize. What they found was a precursor warship blazing with power, operating at 40% capacity and augmented by human insanity. Targeting systems online. Tyler yelled, throwing himself into the command chair. He'd built his own interface because he couldn't figure out the eldest's controls in time. His station was a nightmare of exposed wiring, salvaged display screens, and control panels that were half melted and held together with magnetic tape and stubborn determination. But it responded to his touch, feeding him targeting data in a format his human brain could actually process. This approach is illogical, Meridian observed, even as it followed Tyler's erratic commands. The AI was designed for precision, for calculated responses, for optimal firing solutions based on millions of variables. You are not optimizing firing solutions. Your targeting patterns make no mathematical sense. Your evasive maneuvers violate basic tactical doctrine. I'm not trying to optimize. Tyler called back, his hands flying over the controls. I'm trying to confuse them. Their computers expect logical patterns. So we give them chaos. He called out adjustments like he was calling plays in a football game, pure instinct and gut feeling. Left. No, your other left. Wait for it, now. The Eternal Meridian's weapons blazed, purple energy lancing across space in patterns that made no tactical sense but somehow worked anyway. The Vrax tactical computers tried to predict the next move, running probability algorithms and combat simulations. Every prediction was wrong. The ship didn't move like a precursor vessel operating on perfect calculations. It moved like a street fighter, unpredictable and aggressive, taking risks that no sane commander would take. The Vrax flagship took a direct hit to its shield generators, the kind of shot that should have been impossible because the Eternal Meridian should have been focused on the closer targets. But Tyler wasn't playing by their rules. He was playing by instinct, by feeling, by the chaos that lived in the human brain. Bank right and give them everything we've got on that cruiser. Tyler shouted. That cruiser is not the primary threat, Meridian argued. I don't care. Hit it anyway. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire, and the Vrax formation broke apart in confusion. Their algorithms couldn't handle it. They were designed for logical warfare against logical opponents. Tyler's decisions were based on gut instinct, split-second improvisation, and what felt right in the moment. The Eternal Meridian fought like no precursor ship ever had. Unpredictable, chaotic, beautifully human. The Vrax flagship, its shields down and its hull breached, signaled retreat. The remaining fleet scattered like startled birds, jumping back into hyperspace before this insane precursor vessel could do any more damage. In the sudden silence that followed, Tyler slumped in his chair, every muscle in his body shaking with exhaustion. His hands were trembling. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. Meridian spoke quietly, and there was wonder in that ancient voice. The eldest believed evolution meant transcending imperfection. They sought to remove all flaws, all randomness, all chaos from their existence. But your species has shown me something different. Imperfection, adaptability, instinct, chaos, is its own form of perfection. It is the ability to do the impossible because you do not know it is impossible. Tyler managed a weak laugh. So, does this mean you're not mad about all the safety violations? Tyler Hayes, Meridian said, and if an AI could smile, it was definitely smiling. I would like to accompany you. To learn more about humanity. To understand how a species so young, so chaotic, so wonderfully imperfect can accomplish what the galaxy's greatest minds cannot. If you will have me. Tyler grinned up at the ceiling. Welcome to the crew, Meridian. The copper sun limped away from the fringe with two ships now, one beaten-up salvage freighter and one ancient precursor warship that had decided humans were the most interesting species in the galaxy. Captain Vrikis was already worrying about insurance premiums and docking fees. How exactly do you explain to Port Authority that you picked up a precursor AI? Tyler was already thinking about what other impossible ships might be out there, waiting in the dark. Waiting for someone crazy enough to treat ancient alien technology like an old pickup truck that just needed the right kick to get started.